Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm really thrilled and pleased to have with me as my guest David Brekke, who's a partner at Goodwin. David, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much for having me, Richard.
Now, David, you have one of the more unusual backgrounds, at least for lawyers, anyways. You played varsity football in college for looks like for 4 years. Tell me how you got into football in the first place.
That's a good question. I think it's kind of funny to me. I grew up in Houston, Texas, so it was just in the water, and it was everywhere you looked. It was at school, even in middle school. Actually, in elementary school, it was kind of what's the most common sport kids are doing. There's obviously soccer and t-ball, but football was one that kind of everyone was doing, and you were kind of opting out if you weren't doing it, at least as far as that was my perception.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it wasn't hard to find myself in that situation as just, here's the kids who are having the most fun. Let me go roughhouse with them. And that yeah, it was easy to go that direction.
Did you have any football players in the family, athletes or anything like that? Are you a naturally gifted athlete?
Oh, you know what's funny is well, you can debate whether I'm a naturally gifted athlete. Of course, I would say so. Um, my dad is from Wisconsin, and
Uh-huh.
so there it's the Packers, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so the way he grew up, there was this prior generation of people who the thing that we were looking up to was grit and absolute toughness and playing in the snow. And, that was kind of like a heroic type of person. There's dudes playing out there with missing teeth and just keep playing. And, my dad being from Wisconsin, grew up on a dairy farm. He's a big guy. He's 6'4", he's a big guy. And he played in high school
Uh-huh.
and went to University of Wisconsin, and he didn't play there, but it stayed with him in terms of work ethic and the things that you learn in football that apply to everyday life. The farm also does that too. So being coming from that and looking up to those guys, Ray Nitschke being one of them, it's like, okay, I want to be tough. I want to
Yeah.
be, I want to like no matter what happens, I want to like try my best. And my brother also is 3 years ahead of me. So kind of like close enough to play with, but not close enough to be better than in any game.
Uh-huh.
So he also played football, a little bit bigger than me, and it was good for me because he, everything I was wondering whether I should do this or that, he had kind of tried it and was showing me if you want to do this, here's a good way to do it. He's kind of a straight A student type of guy, also kind of a big dude,
Uh-huh.
and so it was like, okay, I can follow these footsteps, and this is going to be a good path to follow.
Well, what position did you end up gravitating towards in high school and college?
Yeah. So ever since I was little, I was a quarterback.
Oh.
And I would, I'll throw it and I'll try to make good decisions throwing it. And that was kind of like who I was. And so in junior high, I got to be on, the real team doing that and got to be pretty good at it. And then in high school, the stakes get raised, right? And if
Yeah,
you're
of
a
course.
quarterback in Texas in high school, they don't even let you play other sports. And so I remember trying out for the basketball team, and I thought I was okay at basketball too,
Yeah.
and then not making it. And I was like, man, we even have a B team and a C team. How did I even make the C team
Yeah.
basketball? And I went to go tell my coach the day after, my football coach, and he was like, guess you didn't make the team, huh? And I was like, what? And he started laughing at me because he was like, you can't play basketball. You're football now. And so I was like, oh, you could have told me. I would have, maybe whatever. But maybe I wasn't good enough for them to make an exception to the rule at basketball. So football was my sport. Loved it. I mean, loved it. There's so much to love about it. I guess what was the question again? Yeah.
Well, I was just asking what position you played. So, did you win
Yeah.
anything in high school? Like, did you win a championship or anything like that in high school?
Yeah, for sure. My sophomore year when I first became the starting quarterback, we had a mediocre or to not very good team. I think we were 3-7 that year. Did not make the playoffs. My junior year, a little more experience, and the team kind of matured a little bit. And the school was only 10 or 11 years old, so we had not had a lot of historical success making the playoffs and proceeding to like the Texas State championship game, whatever. But my junior year, we did,
Hmm.
and so we're conference champions and kind of the big school thing. So these are schools with 700, 800 kids per class. These are the big high schools, and we got to win the division. and go to the playoffs, and we got to win in the playoffs. And so we got at and in Texas, we have a 64 team tournament, just like March Madness.
Oh, right.
And so we got to the Elite Eight, and that's where we ended up. We ended up losing in that round. So we won 3 rounds in the playoffs,
Wow.
and had a great, yeah, that a lot of success that way. And in the senior year, we duplicated that.
Oh,
So we were
wow.
able to do that again. So it was kind of like the farthest the school had ever been in the playoffs. And so it was really fun. Frankly, I was expecting more pomp and circumstance just based on what I saw on TV and
Mm,
movies.
mm.
But no one at school cared. It was just us.
Well, were you drafted by colleges then to play? I mean, you sounds like you were pretty high level. I mean, were you drafted by a lot of schools for college?
Recruited, right? So
Recruited,
colleges
yeah.
will come if your team has one good player,
Yeah.
right? Then the college coaches come from near and far sometimes will come and watch practice.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you have a really good player on the team, you get the coaches come and see other players they wouldn't ordinarily see.
Yeah.
And I was probably in that bucket, right? So I had, some really good players on my team, some folks who went to play at big time Division I football programs like Oklahoma State and others. And so the recruiters were around from time to time, and that was kind of a fun day when they were. And also, we had our own success to speak of. You'd make a tape, you'd send it in, even if they
Okay,
didn't come
right.
by.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I did get recruited. My brother was 3 years ahead of me, as I mentioned, and he had already, by the time I was a sophomore, he was a freshman at Columbia, and he was
Mm.
already playing at Columbia. So again, the footsteps were just
Mm.
my size, and helped me make that decision. My brother was recruited he had a big decision to make. He was making it de novo. And I remember when I was talking to a few schools, including the Air Force Academy, which would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
My grandfather was in the Air Force, and my mother was like, didn't, she didn't want me to make that big commitment at that age,
Uh-huh.
just given her family history, even though her father was in the Air Force. Um, but my brother eventually decided to go to Columbia, as I said. And so I remember I was going to visit with the coaches at Dartmouth, happened to be at a Columbia versus Dartmouth game, so I could go see my brother and also visit the Dartmouth coaches who were recruiting me. And when my brother found out why I was there, I came to his games from time to time, and I said, "Oh, I got to go visit with the other coaches now." And he was like, "What are you doing? Like, Columbia wants you to play here. What choice are you talking about?" Like, and I was like, "Yeah, you know what? You're right. Like, the opportunity to play with my brother,
Yeah.
and also there's Columbia University. There's a lot to say for that as well." So then I stopped talking to anybody else and just said, "Look, I'm going to play with my brother,"
Oh,
and
wow.
that ended up being the right call.
What position did he play?
He was a middle linebacker. So
Uh-huh.
think like me, but just like a thicker neck and just bigger shoulders. And he's absolutely that type of guy. I mean, middle linebackers start in the middle every play. And
Wow.
every play they can expect, giants to just like dive at their knees and somehow navigate that. So it takes a special person to do that. And by the time I started at Columbia, he was team captain. And
Wow.
uh, unique guy. And I'm kind of like the little brother trying to contribute in that kind of environment. Yeah.
So did you play all 4 years as quarterback for Columbia then?
No, great question. A lot of people make the transition from quarterback to another position
Hmm.
at that college stage. So I went my first year as a quarterback, and it was kind of funny because that was the first time, in high school, there was other guys who were good. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I can be better than them. If I do this, I do that, I can be better,
Yeah.
and I can be
Yeah.
the one who deserves to be the starting quarterback. And when I got to college, and that was just my mentality. Like, even if they were better than me, I could still be better than them through whatever
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I got to college, there was a few people on the team, and I'm like, well, these guys are substantially better than me. And like, I'm not going to be better than them. And if I am, we're all in trouble.
Yeah.
So that means I was on the scout team, kind of playing with the kind of second tier offensive players, playing quarterback and doing mixing around, but mostly with the defensive starters and the defensive coaches.
Right.
And so after a year, the defensive coach said, "Hey, you know what? You're pretty low on the depth chart, but like you're the right size to be a safety. And so
Huh.
would you want to switch?" And so I made the switch after my freshman year, and then I played the final 3 years at safety.
Interesting. Well, was that weird going from handling the ball every single play versus rarely touching it at all?
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, exactly. When you touch it, it's a lot more fun to get an interception or a fumble recovery. Yeah, no, safety is in some ways the kind of the quarterback of the defense because you're in the back and you can see everything, right?
Oh,
And you're kind of definitely crucial for communication and all of that. But in some ways, it's very opposite. So on offense, via the quarterback, everything is highly choreographed, right? That's
Right.
the main advantage that the offense has is they know what the play is, and defense
Yeah,
is
yeah,
always
yeah.
reacting.
Yeah.
So on defense, it's a lot more reactive and instinctual. And so that's was really a fun change. Like, it was like a liberating change. Like, yes, like I'm just going to read and go. And the other thing that's great is when you're a quarterback, if you're getting hit, it's often by surprise and
Uh-huh.
like from the worst angle possible. Like you are the hunted. And when
Yeah.
you're a safety, if ever you're hitting somebody, you plan this out. And a lot of times you're the
Right.
hunter. And
Huh.
so that, I think that's more fun. Obviously, you're not throwing a bunch of touchdown passes and you're not on the cover of the magazine as much. But I think physically, it's a
Huh.
more fun position to be in.
Interesting. And you went through all of college and high school and college and never had a major injury? I mean, obviously that must be the biggest, that must be the
Oh
biggest
no, oh
factor.
no, I had
Oh,
major injuries.
oh, you did.
Yeah, yeah. If you talk to somebody who went through all that time and didn't have major injuries, that'll be a rare
Oh,
thing.
okay. Okay.
So I had a couple of knee injuries, two that required surgery. Was able to come back from those and
Oh,
and keep playing. And that's
yeah.
honestly one of the really cool things that, it's not great to have, a lot of people avoid those major injuries, but there's nobody who goes through and never ever gets hurt. There's one kid I know of, and we kind of have a running joke about him being Mr. Invincible. But um, you know, whether it be a sprained ankle, like that happens, or a pulled hamstring that literally you cannot run for weeks,
Yeah.
or a neck or a shoulder or a wrist, like things hurt or get hurt.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had ACL, so that's a surgery one, and it takes you out for a little bit longer, but you can recover. Many people do,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that's part of it. That the risk of it is part of it, and then of course some people get lucky and some people don't.
So when you ended your college career, were you sad that you couldn't go on, or you were like, you know what, that's good enough for me? Like, what was it like?
Um, I remember the feeling of the first day after football was over. It was very distinct because I remember, walking down the street in New York City and the feeling of because the focus, like your life's purpose, like the thing that I'm doing that I'm going to get value back from, like really the thing I'm committed to is
Yeah.
football. And
Yeah.
that means I have to be here at this time and I have to be back at this time. And I shouldn't be doing this or that because, going out and, there was partying happening, but like your life was pretty structured. So you can't just live freely during this time. It's a full-time job. And so I remember the first day after walking down the streets in New York City and really having the sensation all at once of like, look at that building. I could just walk up there right now and I could go do that. And then it kind of like made the world three-dimensional for me in a way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't like I was oppressed. I was very, very happy to be committed to football. But I
Yeah.
remember the feeling of kind of like
Liberation.
now I can choose what my life will be like.
Huh.
And so I was ready. I mean, I was never going to be an NFL player, so there was no option for me to continue.
Yeah.
And if I were 3, 4 inches taller and a lot faster, then yes. So not that close. But so no, it was something that would love to be an NFL player, but it it wasn't like a sudden realization it was
Yeah.
always going to
Yeah.
happen then.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, what made you decide to go to law school? That seems like a far afield from a football player.
Yeah, good question. So, it does tie in actually. So, with that structure I was mentioning, every day we have practice starting and you got to be on the bus to go to the field at 2:30. So,
Yeah.
like,
Wow.
literally, you cannot take an afternoon class. Some people who are like, "Hey, coach, I'm going to be a doctor." They're like, "Okay, you can miss Thursdays because you have to go to lab." But if you don't have that conviction, then it's like you can't miss practice. So
Right.
you cannot take classes in the afternoon. And so for me, I was starting off going to do physics or chemistry. And
Uh-huh.
that was if you had asked me to take a bet, I would have definitely said physics, or engineering.
Huh.
Um, but those classes all required had this
Lab.
big conflict. And I didn't have the conviction to say, and I remember, also like did level one of all that stuff. And level two, I remember coming into class one day and just the first day of class in the second sophomore year, this is hard stuff. Like second level physics at Columbia is not a game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm looking around and the professor asked a question from like chapter 3 of this book. I'm like, I just got the book because I was doing football this whole time and everyone raised their hand and knew the answer. And I said, I don't have the time to dedicate to be good at enough at this that I would feel good about doing this. I can fail at this for sure. So anyway, I you know pivoted to philosophy, and so kind of that means which was more flexible, and you can kind of you don't have to go to lab.
Yeah.
So also means you have to go to more school if you have a philosophy degree. And so I was always good at arguing. At least some
Huh.
people told me that.
Huh.
So law was one where I could feel like even though, lawyers are boring for sure. I mean, that's the stereotype, and it's mostly true, I will have to admit. There's a pathway you can visualize, hey, I could actually be influential, or I could do something meaningful through this. And so that was my vision was like, okay, so like even if I can't invent something really cool, let me let me be influential and contribute to something important through being a lawyer.
Yeah. Interesting. Um, I take it your brother didn't become a lawyer.
No, he became an orthopedic surgeon. And so
Wow.
he did those labs. Yeah. I
That's
didn't know how he
amazing.
did that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, how did you migrate to the legal practice you have in now? Was that also deliberate, or did you kind of stumble into this interesting? I guess you have a climate kind of a focus or something in your practice.
Yeah. Yeah, so for me it was like, what's the thing if I'm going to have a job, right? I mean, like getting over the idea of like I have to have a job that'll, that be a grown up and have a job. Let me at least tie it into something important, right? What do I connect with as like that's going to motivate me to do something boring every day? And so for me, it was always going to be the environment.
Okay.
And by that time, so how you can do that in lawyer in many ways. You can do it through environmental litigation and kind of protecting the environment directly through lawsuits and stuff.
Yep.
An interesting, important thing to do. And I dabbled with that with my summer internships, and then you could same environmental policy and
Hmm.
do that. And then, some people like politics, some people aren't built for that. And to me, those exploring those experiences made me really feel like, hey, look, the way to make a difference, the way to make a positive environmental outcome here is what if there was a bunch of really cool innovations that were profitable while making the environment better,
Hmm.
right? And if that were true, generally, we wouldn't have an issue with capitalism, right? Destroying the environment. Capitalism would keep the environment, very healthy because we're deriving value from that. And so if only there was a bunch of climate unicorn tech companies, right? Then we
Mm.
wouldn't need to like go lobby Congress because Congress would already be trying to help those companies.
Right, right.
So that's the big dream, right? And so where are we now? Like that's not the case. And what do we need? We need a lot of innovation, right? We need solutions that actually are profitable from doing something good for the environment. And so just looking at the space where it is, that's startups because we don't have a lot of mature companies doing that. We have some, but startups, we need new innovations. So that was my idea for like, let me be a positive person for the environment in this way. And
Mm.
that's why I gravitated towards startups.
Hmm.
And I decided to go to like a big firm and say, maybe they won't, it's a big enough firm. They probably have plenty of climate clients, don't even know it.
Hmm.
And then I'll be the guy who kind of like brings them together, and that'll be my whole thing, right?
Interesting.
So that's kind of how it started now.
Huh. And how's that going?
It's going great. I remember when I first started doing this like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
on my old firm, there was some people who were already doing it, which was great, but not kind of fully committed.
Yeah.
And the view generally was, and this is again 2015, oh, good luck with that. Good luck making money doing that. Because like there's no, that's where all the companies die doing this. You're never going to be able to. And the history of making money doing this is not there.
Yeah.
There's Tesla, there's Solar City, but these are the exceptions and not the rule. Most of these companies are very expensive and don't drive the same level of excitement and returns or capital. So like, good luck with your pet project. And from my view, was like, well, if this pet project fails, we're all in big trouble.
Mhm.
So might as well give it a shot. Thankfully, that has somewhat changed, right? Obviously, more and more capital has flowed towards climate. Switched firms more recently to a firm who, when I moved with a partner of mine, and we said, hey guys, we want to come to Goodwin, and we want to be like the world's leading climate team.
Yeah.
And then the response was like, well, that's a great idea. I can't believe we don't have that already. You're like, how can we help you? Which was like,
Uh,
it was such a breath of fresh air. And so we got that, and like the support of the firm, connecting us with people who do the same thing, but with IP innovation. Somebody's really good at, biochemistry IP can help with a lot of these things as one of many, many examples,
Huh.
right? So leveraging this big firm to kind of like add fuel to this fire has been a big catalyst. And so
Hmm.
now we have the climate tech practice here. We have, in terms of total contributors, we have maybe 100 people contributing to this. And, kind of whenever I have a climate opportunity that touches on your specialty, right? People are like, yes, let's do climate. And now we have the specialty advice because it's not the same as a regular startup, right? It's not an
Hmm.
enterprise software startup. And the advice can sometimes be different. So really excited about that. And, I take this very vicarious satisfaction from, I helped you incorporate your company. I helped you decide, how to negotiate with these investors. I helped you decide how to get your team together. But really, the thing I really love is that your solution's now in the market, reducing carbon or making something less poisonous than it was before. So like, this is great.
Yeah.
It's all vicarious. And so, yeah.
Interesting. What would you say the most important lesson that you learned from football that kind of affects your everyday life now as a lawyer, as a professional? What would you say?
I would say there's a lot. I could go on for a long time, but I would say that the number one thing is I've talked about this with other people who have different takes. When I walk into an unexpected challenge, like I feel totally fine.
Hmm.
I feel like I think the thing I remember in psychology is called perceived self-efficacy, and it's just the your default notion of whether when you try something you'll be successful. And for me, like lawyering is not as hard as football. I just have to say this. And people are actively sabotaging you, people are tricking you. You have to make really high stakes decisions like that, and you could get hurt. And you
Yeah,
have to try
yeah.
really, really hard and prepare in many, many ways for that to remotely go well. And so having done that, and by the way, having it go badly, and then knowing that what I do after it goes badly is I just try again, right? So for me, that experience makes me walk into new unexpected challenges with a calm. And so like, yeah, we can do this,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
that's how I feel when I do anything. And I assumed everyone was a little bit like that, and it's not the case.
Yeah,
And
right.
I just look back at football and say, I've had really bad things happen to me. I've overcome really weird challenges, done it with my team, right? And the team is really, and that helps too. And so, yeah, that just peace of mind and that perceived self-efficacy. I think that's what I got from football. That really helps me every single day.
That's really cool. Well, David, this has been a fascinating conversation. I loved hearing your story, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with me.
You too. Thank you, Richard.
This is Richard Hsu and David Brekke. Thanks.